When saving lives is what you do, your standards are anything but standard. In fact, you set them higher than most to deliver results that patients can depend on. You refuse to compromise. We couldn't agree more. We are Edwards Life Sciences, and like you, we believe that good is never good enough. Rising to the challenge of today's TAVR patients isn't just a mission, it's a commitment. And because you set a higher standard, we set our sights on meeting you there. Welcome to the higher standard, your standard. Learn more at edwardstavr.com.
You're listening to Parallax from Radcliffe Cardiology in association with makeadent.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Parallax. I am Amit Goyal, co-founder of CardioNerds, and I am just so honored to be here as a guest host of Parallax with a very special guest, someone you've all gotten to know extremely well, Dr. Ankur Kalra. This is a discussion like no other. It's an amalgamation of CardioNerds and Parallax. Ankur, the tables have turned. How does it feel to be a guest on your own show?
Well, Amit, first off, it's great to be with you as usual, and it feels nice. It feels I'm elated and I'm smiling. Ear to ear. It feels as if Parallax is on this pedestal, and the fact that we get to do this. I certainly think very highly of CardioNerds, as I'm sure all of us do, all of our colleagues, and the platform that you've built is just incredible. So, when Radcliffe approached me to approach you at CardioNerds to do this special episode for Parallax, having me as a guest and having the CardioNerds producers as guest hosts, as you've called yourself, and the fact that you agreed to it, it was a win-win, and it feels amazing. By the way, it feels great, and I'm looking forward to what you have for me. And for those of you, and for those of us who are listening and tuning in, even though Amit and I are close, Amit has not shared any of the questions with me, so this is going to be an impromptu discussion. I'm just putting this out there as a disclaimer.
We are going to put you in a hot seat today, Dr. Kalra. And, we are just so thrilled to be able to do this collaboration. And when I say we, I'm including Daniel Ambinder, who's my partner in crime and co-founder of CardioNerds. He's unable to join. He was really looking forward to this. But as it is, and we'll talk about this duality of all of our lives, he's an intervention fellow and got called in to put in an emergency balloon pump on a patient. So, the patients are always in the center of everything we do. But, Dr. Kalra, we've often talked about how intimate this vocal medium is, and through this vocal medium, how, our wonderful Parallax listeners have gotten to know you in a very special way. But you spend all your time honoring your guests. That I'd like to use this moment to reintroduce them to you for all of your accomplishments. So, my friends, let me tell you about Dr. Ankur Kalra. Dr. Kalra is an interventional cardiologist and medical director of clinical research for regional cardiovascular medicine at the Cleveland Clinic, assistant professor at the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine, adjunct associate professor at the Northeast Ohio Medical University, and director of the Barry J. Marin Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Center in New Delhi, India. He is certified in patient safety, healthcare quality, health informatics, and leadership from Harvard Medical School's first one-year safety, quality, informatics, and leadership certification program. He's also currently pursuing a Master's of Science program in Health Economics, Outcomes, and Management in Cardiovascular Sciences at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Dr. Kalra, I didn't know that about you, but it's just, I don't know how you find the time to do everything. But you've also presented late-breaking science at national and international scientific cardiovascular meetings, and you've published over 200 scientific manuscripts in peer-reviewed journals. He's authored a poetry book called Ibadah. He is known to his countless trainees as a devoted mentor and sponsor. So, Dr. Kalra, you are so many things: a doctor, a scientist, an author, a poet, mentor, and more. But today, you are our esteemed guest. So welcome to Parallax.
Well, Amit, Thanks. I always chuckle when you say welcome to Parallax. It's like the tables have turned. First off, the introduction is extremely kind. I have this dual appointment now, as associate professor, both at the Lerner College as well as at Neomed. The associate professorship happened when I moved over to the clinic from my previous appointment. That's when Dr. Kapadi and Dr. Nissen had endorsed my application for a promotion at Case Western Reserve University. And this was in 2019. I got the promotion, I think last year in the summer of 2020. But thank you so much for the kind introduction. When you were describing this to me, it felt incredible. If you were to ask me how I did all of this, the answer would be, the true answer is I do not know. Perhaps I have attention deficit disorder, and I just get enticed by many things that life has to offer. And I can't tell you, the one thing I can tell you, systematically in all of these accomplishments, and if you've heard me say this several times, that we're not our accomplishments and we're not our failures. We're just fellow colleagues and physicians and human beings, and we're just trying to make through this life and make the best of every opportunity that life bestows upon us. And that's how I like to approach occurrences in my life. But what I truly value, so what I was going to say was that the one thing that I can say for sure in having achieved all these various milestones is that when I take upon a task, I want to give it 100%, and I want to give it 100% from the core of my existence, and I want to be true to it, and I want to be authentic. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a project, whether it's taking care of patients, or when I would like to believe, or I would like to be known for the following, and that is that if I say yes to something, I'm all in. There's not a part of me which is not convinced that I would not do this. So maybe that's the secret sauce. And I don't consider myself as hugely accomplished. I'm early career faculty, and I have a lot to still learn and finesse. Interventional cardiology is very complex, and I fail in the cath lab, and I learn from my failures, and I have a long way to go. And that's my current state of mind, is that I have a long way to go.
Oh, well, as an early career faculty, you have accomplished so much. And I think this combination of ambition, authenticity, and humility is certainly a combination I would aspire to. And, coming back to your role with Parallax, I may be biased, but I've come to think of podcasting as an art form. You as a creator, as a designer, have so much creative decision-making. You're curating content, you're inviting your guests, you're deciding what to ask them. So we'd like to celebrate Parallax as a product of your vision, Dr. Kalra, as a reflection of who you are. And to that end, we have several windows into your thoughts and background and values and reflections. You've written some extraordinary perspective pieces in peer-reviewed journals, and they each provide a different perspective on who you are, kind of like a parallax, if you will. So in today's game show, we'll bring up different pieces that you've written and ask you what they've meant for you and how it's informed your vision and creation of Parallax. So the first question is, Dr. Kalra, are you game?
Yes, no, I'm looking forward to this. I do not know what you have up your sleeve for me, Amit, but I'm game, and I'm looking forward to this.
Well, I'd like to start with a piece you wrote that really resonates with me and several of our members within the CardioNerds family. Is titled "Perseverance versus Pedigree: Ankur Kalra, a foreign medical graduate, discusses how determination and perseverance overcame pedigree in his quest for a successful academic cardiology career in America. Determination was the ingredient to success. And this was published in the European Heart Journal in June 2017. And you've also given a remarkable grand rounds on this. I was fortunate to attend part of that. And it's something about the way it's written and the content, the flow. It's clearly very personal. You pour your heart out in describing your path and your journey, and that the twists and turns that got you to where you are today. You were born and you grew up in India, and you accelerated during your training and studying over there. You attended the All India Institute of Medicine Sciences, a phenomenal, highly competitive program to get into. And you must have been torn when you decided to kind of leave that trajectory and come to America. But you describe how you were following a dream you've had from a very early time to get training in the United States. But something about that transition was maybe as a surprise, maybe not as a surprise, but you described about how it was overwhelming, but still you persevered, and just through grit and determination, you did very well. And you end off the piece by saying that with regards to getting your interventional training at Beth Israel Deaconess, and you wrote, "I graduated with an Ivy League diploma, but what I learned outside the catheterization laboratory was priceless. That cultivating a true pedigree is a labor of love that eventually gets its due. That, so much of what matters comes from within, not from outside." So, Dr. Kalra, again, this piece is so powerful, and it resonates so much with so many people out there. I'd like to ask, what does this mean to you in retrospect? You wrote this a number of years ago. And what advice do you have for our international medical graduate trainees?
Yeah, so thanks for bringing this up, Amit. This is like you said, an extremely personal piece, and something that I wanted to write after I had sort of checked the box for Ivy League diploma in my bucket list, and I still have quite a few check boxes in my bucket list. And, as I keep, growing and learning more, more about myself and more about my flaws and more about my own inherent biases, the one message that I want to share with, foreign graduates, yeah, for sure, because, I'm one of them, and I resonate with these struggles of foreign medical graduates. But I think all of us in general is that I think it's important to question our biases and beliefs, and it's question them because and be extremely open-minded. And the reason I say that is that a lot of these inherent biases and beliefs that we have about, ourselves, or, I'm just going to give an example, for example, maybe institutions, is just how we perceived them to be, or how they were marketed to us. And, I think one of my teachers, back in India, told me that that intelligence follows the Gaussian Principle, and the Gaussian Principle is that intelligence is distributed across the planet in the form of normal distribution. So intelligence is not concentrated in the ivory towers, for example, in the U.S. I'm by no means I'm demeaning them. I was fortunate to be in one of those institutions, and I have a lot of respect for Harvard Medical School and Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. Incredibly smart colleagues who I look up to. So by no means I'm demeaning the ivory tower. That's not the intent of this message. The intent of the message is that and this was learning for me, and that learning for me was that, at the end of the day, how good of a physician I am or how good of a clinical investigator I am. A lot of it depends on who I am. A lot of that outcome, depends on how much I am willing to put in to get a task accomplished. And because of my spiritual teachings and I read the Bhagavad Gita and I want to follow the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And what I was going to, the reason I bring Bhagavad Gita up is that yes, I want to do action, but at the same time, I also want to be detached from the results of the action, which is the central tenet of the Gita. Because the Gita teaches you that you're only entitled to your action. You are not entitled to the results of your action. And what the results of your action are going to be is none of our business, should not be any of your business. So it teaches us detachment, which is extremely, extremely hard to practice. Because, whenever you take up an action, for example, putting together CardioNerds or putting together Parallax, right? It's in our nature, it's in our inherent nature that we want to put out content that people should like. That's the inherent nature of why you want to do, for example, a meaningful episode of CardioNerds or a meaningful episode of Parallax. And, more than that, I think more than just you really want to touch lives, you want to inspire lives, you want to educate, you want to disseminate good knowledge, good information. And, the intention is noble, but how that final product is going to be perceived and whether it's going to be liked or not liked, or whether it'll become popular or become unpopular, or whether it will reach the number of people you thought it should reach or it may reach, should not be any of your business. And that is something which is extremely, extremely hard to imbibe. So, getting back to the message of perseverance versus pedigree is that, yes, it's great to check these boxes off and go to these incredible institutions. But at the end of the day, what you will end up doing in your life, the vast majority of it actually really depends on who you are and how much you put in and how much you seek opportunity in circumstances that life throws at you. It's like the mountaineering analogy. And that analogy is that the mountain will not change its direction or its terrain based on the skill of the mountaineer. It's the other way around. The mountaineer has to be in the moment and has to, think on the fly and change the direction or the trajectory of each step based on how the terrain is. I think that's an overarching message. It's again, extremely hard to practice. It's something that I want to inculcate in my own life on a day-to-day basis. And I can tell you, having practiced this is extremely hard. When you have obstacles and when you have painful moments in personal and professional life, and I've been through several painful points in my life, both personally and professionally. I can tell you that when you are in that painful moment, it's extremely hard. It's heartbreaking. It challenges you and it shakes you to the core when you are going through that experience. But if you have this mountaineer mindset, or if you have this Bhagavad Gita mindset, or if you have the perseverance versus pedigree mindset, I think it can help you navigate these challenges and I think life in general in a more balanced fashion. That's what I think. I don't know if that answered your question, Amit, but I just tried to be as authentic and honest as I could be.
No, absolutely, Dr. Kalra. And we invited you to speak to our CardioNerds Academy fellows just about your journey and your story. And it was an incredibly intimate moment where we had all of these trainees that were able to just ask you whatever was on their mind. Conversation, we ended up debriefing for like an hour after you left. And it was just so apparent how touched and inspired they were by your path. Now, your journey says a lot about your grit and perseverance and brilliance, but there's also a recurrent theme of how people have impacted you in various ways. Right? We're all benefited. We all benefit from countless mentors and sponsors, and they may be senior to us or even junior to us. We get inspiration from different angles. So I'd like to ask you what mentorship means to you and how that's informed your planning for Parallax. It really does seem to be a recurring theme across several phenomenal discussions that you've had. And if you just look at the list of episodes and you search mentorship, you've got, with Dr. Srihari Naidu, Dr. Neil Kleiman, Dr. Laura Mowry, Dr. Mikos, and Danielle Bellardo, Marty Leon, Mandeep Mehra, and I can go on. So it seems like mentorship has really been something central to how you've designed Parallax, and it's guided the discussions you've had. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Amit. So mentorship is extremely important to me. I think in part because I've always sought out mentors. I think of I've always gravitated toward my mentors, and I've always been on the lookout or on the search for a mentor. And I think that regardless of being in cardiology or cardiovascular medicine or interventional cardiology or medicine or being in other fields or life in general, I have come to realize that I think one really benefits. It's like having a personal trainer. I'm just giving the analogy of working out at the gym. And the reason you should have a personal trainer is because that is, in my own experience, and obviously I'm talking from my experiences here, is that a personal trainer continues to challenge you and sees where you've stagnated and where you need to up the game, so that you continue to refine yourself and continue to seek excellence, identify your blind spots, and be aware of them. And more than your strengths, I think it is extremely important to know about your weaknesses. And I think true mentorship does that for mentees, in my opinion. And I've been extremely fortunate to have some incredible mentors in my life. And at the current institution, for example, at the Cleveland Clinic, it's Dr. Samir Kapadia, and I look up to him. Obviously, I'll never be a Samir Kapadia, but I look up to him for his skill and his intellect, and how he has achieved so much being a foreign graduate himself. I think he's broken a major glass ceiling, in my eyes. He's someone who, I will approach if I'm in trouble, and hope that, he would find the answers for me, which, may or may not be the answers that I'm looking for, but in the long run will be good answers for me, for my career. And I think that's what the job of a mentor is. Outside of the clinic, and ever since I've been at Bethersville Deaconess, and from I should say probably 2015 until now, and I've had the incredible fortune of authoring several manuscripts with him, is Dr. Deepak Bhatt. I'm very close to him. He has been, again, an incredible source of inspiration. Someone who's always available, for a conversation, and is willing to, spend time having the hot conversation.
and has, Dr. Butt, I have the highest amount of respect for you, so please don't take this otherwise. But has actually even scolded me on emails, and I've listened to him because he's scolded me for the valid reasons and for the greater good. So those are the kinds of people you need, because it's very hard to find people who will be genuinely interested in your career, right? Either people will not care, or they'll be superficial, because it takes a lot of effort to have the hard conversation. It takes a great deal of strength and honesty, and I think if someone is taking the time to sit down with you and have that hard conversation with you, I would also actually bring up Dr. David Hedrick here, who's my partner at Cleveland Clinic, Akron General. He's the director of interventional cardiovascular programs at Akron, and is someone who has time and again pulled me on the side and has had the tough conversation with me. Because look, I'm still early career, so people like Dave Hedrick and Deepak Bhatt and Samir Kapadia and from the structural heart training, Neil Kleiman and Mike Reardon. I mean, these are the people who I would go to if I'm in trouble and if I'm looking for answers and if I'm fumbling, if I'm having bad days. And all of us will, and it's important to recognize that, and it's important to be honest about it. And it's important to know who to approach, because, like I said, either people will not care or they'll be superficial, but only the ones who are truly, truly invested in your success will actually tell you what the truth is. And that's what you should be honest enough to be seeking. So mentorship is crucial, Amit. Mentorship is crucial in, like I said, all aspects of life, but in medicine. And the other thing which, I think is important is that you should not burden a particular individual with the burden of mentorship for everything that life has to throw at you, right? That's extremely important too. So, I've mentors for, different problems. I think mentors sort of know that and appreciate that as well, because, each one of us has our own strengths and weaknesses. So I think tap into strengths of different mentors, and sort of form your, mentor team, as I call it. Seek out their opinion, seek out their headspace, and, just also, let them know that. I think, they would truly cherish that, in my opinion, and they would truly value that. And I'm sort of fairly vocal about it. Like I've tweeted out multiple times how mentors have shaped my career and have helped me identify my weaknesses, my blind spots, and where I'm fumbling. So I think letting them know how much they mean to you is also extremely important. I hope that answers your mentorship question, Amit.
Thanks, Dr. Kalra. And, I think having support from effective mentors and sponsors is so important. But like you said, it's not just support. We all can use a healthy dose of tough love here and there. And I wish for everyone to be able to find mentors like Dr. Kapadia and Dr. Bhatt. And I also wish for everyone to be in a fortunate position to be able to provide mentorship and pay it forward. I think that's a very lucky place to be, and a privileged place to be. But, not all mentors are created equal. And speaking of mentorship, I'm reminded of a piece that you called, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this right, you'll have to correct me, Schadenfreude. Does the desire to succeed at all costs result in a detriment to the individual's soul? And this was published in the European Heart Journal in December 2019. And, this term Schadenfreude refers to the emotion of deriving joy in the misfortune of others. You talk about envy and jealousy and how maybe a mentor might tell their junior colleagues, and their mentees the following. Listen, the moment you transition from being a trainee to faculty, you are perceived as competition and everyone wants you to fail. I can just imagine, the emotional trauma, that people may have if that morphs into their world view. So medicine is a competitive field. And writing this, you answered 3 questions, and I encourage everyone to read this. One was, who is it that we're competing with? 2 was, how much perceived success is enough success to satiate us? And that's a question I ask of myself all the time. And 3 is, what is the intention or purpose of the sense of Schadenfreude? Like, does it have a benefit? So, this came out in December 2019. How does that concept play into your perception of, of things as you've evolved? And specifically, what I want to ask you is, what's the right balance between ambition, the strive to succeed, versus a person's vulnerability to burnout? And you've had, I'm thinking about a series of conversations you had at Parallax on burnout and resilience with Dr. Kavita Chinayan, with competition, individualism, mindfulness, ego, practice and self-care to avoid burnout. I think this is something we all must grapple with at some point as we grow and advance in our careers.
Yes, Amit, and it's something that I grapple with even now. And particularly with interventional cardiology and clinical research, which I'm definitely heavily involved in. And it's look, the honest answer is that it's tough, and it's going to be different for each one of us, and we have to be mindful enough and have an inner barometer where we know when to stop. And it can be extremely hard. The one barometer is, at least for me, is, when you start getting impatient with long cases. I think that's never a good sign. And that's when you sort of have to, take a step back and stop and really ask yourself why that is happening. And, usually if you're honest enough with yourself, and if you have the strength to look in the mirror and ask yourself why that is, you'll find the answer. Because, we each one of us like truly knows, or if we haven't found ourselves, I mean, look, finding yourself is a lifelong journey, I believe. But I think what mindfulness does is that it forces you to encounter yourself on a day-to-day basis and keep asking yourself this question of who you are. And, what is your, I'm going to use a Hindi/Gita word here, is like, what is your inherent dharma? And, maybe you know what the meaning of dharma is. It rhymes with karma. Karma is action. And, dharma is the inherent nature of your soul that you're born with. And if your karma, which is action, is not aligned with the inherent nature of your soul that you're born with, which is what dharma is, there's going to be friction. And, it is my own belief system, or you can call it a faith system, that, life will keep throwing circumstances at you till your karma aligns with your dharma. I think that's what ends up happening to each one of us. And that's the journey of our life. But, in order for us to recognize that, right? Like, in order for us to read the signs from the universe, we have to be in tune with ourselves. We have to be in tune with our true inner self. And that requires, a lot of inner work. In my opinion, it requires a certain degree of solitude. Each day is like calling it like the white zone, where there are no notifications. You're not answering any pages. You're not on the email. You're not listening to a lecture or a podcast. You're not reading a newspaper. You're not reading a journal article. You're just sitting with yourself. And, I think that me time or the white zone or solitude is extremely important, because that's when you reflect, and that's when your inner voice can come out and talk to you, which I think is extremely important, and I think is extremely relevant. Coming back to Schadenfreude, and you pronounced it absolutely wonderfully. Schadenfreude, unfortunately, exists, and I have experienced it in my professional life. It's a very uncomfortable situation to experience. It's an uncomfortable emotion to experience, and when the piece came out, it sort of drew a lot of traction. This was back in 2019 in December. It drew a lot of traction, on Twitter. And, for a CardioPulse piece, even the editors wrote me an email saying that the altmetric score was unusually high for a CardioPulse piece, for it to have achieved, that kind of an altmetric score. And the then editor-in-chief for that section, who's now, he stepped down, and there's a new team. But I remember him, like in his last sort of piece for the section, he specifically mentioned this article, that this was one of his highlights as the editor for the section, and that it was, vastly downloaded and also shared, with colleagues, even outside of cardiovascular medicine, which is very special to me. So it sort of, and I'm sharing this with you, Amit, because I'm not trying to brag about how great of a piece this is. What I'm trying to get at is that the piece somehow resonated with so many, right? That it was, shared widely and downloaded, which tells you that, unfortunately, there's a lot of Schadenfreude in medicine, which is sad. I mean, we're here we should be at least, here for each other and to take care of each other as we take care of our patients. Look, what we do is very taxing to begin with. And if on top of that, you have to worry about an emotion like Schadenfreude, it's unfortunate. I've unfortunately experienced it. And, just by the response that the piece garnered online and on Twitter, unfortunately, a lot of our colleagues experience it. And, if you and I can be, or maybe if this episode, or if CardioNerds, or if Parallax, if all of us can be the medium or the media to sort of change this for the better, that'll be fantastic. That'll be great, because, being on the receiving end is not fun. I can tell you that for a fact.
Thanks, Dr. Kalra. You've covered so much here in this last bit. With regards to Schadenfreude, it's part of how we've structured this hierarchy of medicine. The promotional tracks, and how we're groomed to think about promotion and advancement in a career. And I do hope that we take away something else from how we interact with our colleagues. And it's actually one of the reasons I'm attracted to the free open access medical education space, the social media space, because it's a vast enough space that allows opportunity for everyone to grow, and it encourages people to sponsor one another and give one another visibility. But in the grand rounds that you delivered in discussing your perseverance versus pedigree talk, you gave people several takeaways. And there were a couple of takeaways that I think are very relevant here. One was be kind always. And parenthetically, it's about you, not them. And another one was give more than you can take. And I think that speaks a lot to karma. So with regards to, I think, how we interact with our colleagues, people, they've got this great sense of what your intentions are. And the more good you put out there, the more well you wish of others. I think that comes back around in many folds. So I think that's really important. With regards to, we'll talk about mindfulness and spirituality, and we'll talk about, I want to go back to dharma also, because that's such an important concept. But with regards to burnout, there's a reason that we did this. We've gone through, a decade plus worth of training. We take time away from ourselves, our family, to be in the hospital. The reason is so clear. The patient is always at the center of everything we do. And it's very easy to get distracted with the minutia of the day-to-day. But if we keep going back to the patient, I think it's effective for, staving off burnout, right? Keeping the primary goal at the center of our mind. And so this takes me back to a recent piece that came out, Heart, Mind, and Soul, Spirituality in Cardiovascular Medicine. And this was published in the European Heart Journal 2021. And it's about, how cardiovascular disease puts things into perspective for our patients. You're right that it refocuses attention on the meaning of life, purpose, and relationship to self, family, community, and whatever is held sacred for our patients. And you talk about spirituality and religious beliefs tend to shape cultural and moral beliefs, perception of health and disease, lifestyle, and daily habits. How, this notion of being spiritual and having spiritual practices may have meaningful roles for our patients with chronic cardiovascular illness. And in the paper, you even define some possible physiological mechanisms whereby spirituality could potentially affect bodily functions, like affecting the autonomic nervous system, central nervous system, endocrine, immune systems. And you ended the paper saying that essentially spiritual exercises may potentially have a positive benefit on cardiovascular disease outcomes. So, Dr. Kalra, I think it's just very apparent even in our conversation right now, you strike me as a very spiritual person yourself. It seems to guide how you interact with the world around you and the decisions you make. How does this influence your approach with your patients? And especially as an interventional cardiologist, I imagine you see them at their most vulnerable times.
Yes, I do. And I couldn't agree with you more. It affects me. It affects how I practice medicine. It affects my interaction with patients and their families. I'm unusually soft-spoken in the cath lab, is what I've been told by the cath lab staff that work with me. To the point that at times that they get annoyed and they want me to speak up. But I'm quiet. I'm a quiet person at work, and I think if you practice spirituality over the course of years, you sort of start taking the journey inward. So I'm going to snatch a quote. I'm a quotes person, so I'm going to snatch a quote from Arianna Huffington, in which she says that in 2021 and moving forward, it should not only be onwards and upwards, it should be onwards, upwards, and inwards. Because inwards is where you find yourself, and inwards is where you actually really find the universe. And if you read ancient wisdom, or the ancient sacred texts in Hinduism or Buddhism, that was the central tenet of the lives of our ancestors, and that was the journey inward. Here's another quote, right? Like, what they used to say was that the goal of a life is to find your purpose, and is actually to find your gift. To find your gift is the goal of your life, and the purpose of your life is to give that gift away. Because I'm probably gonna. I don't know if you understand Hindi, Amit, but one of the central teachings of Buddhism is sab nashwar hai. This is in Hindi. It goes like sab nashwar hai. What that means is that everything everything comes to an end. That's the universal truth. Whether it's the life of a star, or whether it's the life of a human being, everything comes to an end. So if you can garner that purpose of finding your gift and giving it away, you've essentially lived a fulfilled life, in my opinion. And as per the teachings of the ancient sacred texts. So I sort of carry that with me to the cath lab, sort of helping patients to see the bigger picture, the overarching theme and mission of their lives and their families. And it has been amazing for me as to how much patients have sort of resonated with these conversations. Particularly family members of the ones whom I've lost have really, really resonated with these conversations. Actually, some of them reach out to me on Twitter DM, direct messaging, to sort of ask these spiritual questions and seek answers. And when when I'm able, I definitely respond to every one of them. It may not be as prompt as I'd like it to be, but I do respond to them whenever I can get to them. But this definitely for me prevents burnout, right? Because it's more than just delivering evidence-based cardiovascular medicine and performing, high-risk interventional procedures. It's really about touching them spiritually also, which gives me a lot of meaning. It does. Burnout. Burnout has never occurred to me at all at work, and I think this is one of the reasons why. I think also personally for me, and this is going back to the Bhagavad Gita and to mindfulness and to karma and detachment. When you have an adverse outcome in the cath lab, look, I'm not saying that losing a patient is fun, right? It befuddles me. It consumes me. It just it annihilates my soul. Even as a conscious practitioner of spirituality, it still makes me go through those emotions. But I think I hope I'm able to balance these emotions, although some of my colleagues may disagree with me, and including my wife may disagree with me, because I am an emotional person. But I think you can sort of come to terms with the failures and the losses in the cath lab based on the theory of detachment, that you are only entitled to your actions and you're not entitled to the results of your actions. So even though some actions are going to garner you success and praise and applause, the same set of actions can also garner you disappointment and failure. So as long as you can not identify yourself as the doer, which is what the Gita teaches us, that has a very deep spiritual meaning. And, you just carry forward, keep doing your karma yoga, which is the sheer act of doing action and remaining detached to the results. And that sort of keeps you balanced. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you in terms with reality. It does not let success get into your head. It does not let failure get into your head. You sort of like at that place of equanimity, which is I can tell you is extremely hard, because you're still human. I mean, I'm as human as anyone can be. You ask my wife, and she'll tell you how emotional I am. And so but it's that continual exercise of refinement, right? You want to keep refining your inner work so that one day you can be as equanimous as you may be.
Words of wisdom, Dr. Kalra, and I'll certainly hang on to these as I begin my own interventional training in a short few weeks. You also spoke beautifully about that patient-doctor relationship, and even just how you counsel patients in the Health Design podcast with Dr. Moyes Shiva. I think, as physicians, the ability to take care of our patients is our most sacred duty. And that patient-doctor relationship, one of our most prized of relationships. Your connection with your patients clearly has had a major influence on Parallax. You've hosted several patients with incredible stories to tell. With a primary provider audience, why is this so important? We've done similarly on CardioNerds, but you've hosted Dr. Ellen Gregosian, you've hosted Lindsay Davis. Why is it so important for our colleagues to hear it directly from our patients?
This may sound cliched, and it's patients first, right? It's the motto of our institution that we work for, and this is clearly in not being sponsored by the Cleveland Clinic or and the views that we've shared are our own, just as a disclaimer, not of our employer, but it is. I mean, look, we are because of our patients. We go to work every day because of our patients, and we became physicians to take care of our patients, and and that's it. Like, it's patients first. It's just as simply as I can put it. So I think it's important to I'm trying to remember the correct citation of this manuscript, but I do remember citing it for one of the articles that I'd written. And this was an original paper from some of the work we did with the American College of Cardiology in India through the Pinnacle India Quality Improvement Project, in which, like, every physician-patient interaction is interrupted by the physician like 8 or 10 times within a minute. So, the way, healthcare is being delivered, patients feel that they're not being listened to. And that's extremely important. Like, it's extremely important to listen to your patient. And you probably would have seen several patients, over at Cleveland Clinic main campus, with, quote unquote, being labeled as the anxious patient or the difficult patient, or the patient who wants multiple answers, or the patient who has difficult questions. Patients keep seeking providers because they haven't been listened to, is what they feel. And, the only thing that patients truly want is for the physicians to listen to them. So, I felt that if Parallax has become what it has become, then, I felt it more than a calling. I thought it was just a moral obligation to also be a stage for patients to come and share their stories, because, that's going to be really powerful to listen as a healthcare provider. And that's why we started the patient episode series in 2021.
I couldn't agree more, Dr. Kalra. The discussions that we've had on CardioNerds with patients and their families are the ones that I am the most proud of, and the ones I've learned so much from. And it's even influenced my patient approach in my real life patient care, because it's amazing how much you learn from them. You just have to sit down and listen, and that's it. You learn about them, their stories. It might inspire you in ways that you can't imagine. But also, you learn about them in a way that really can influence your medical approach, right? You just, there's a lot of depth in that conversation. So I appreciate that, that you've brought a lot of that into Parallax. We certainly have a duty to our patients. And speaking of duty and purpose, I'd like to turn to another just absolutely profound perspective you wrote with Dr. Kavita Chennaiyan and Dr. Aaron Mikos, COVID-19 and the Healthcare Worker, Lessons from the Bhagavad Gita from India during these difficult times. And this goes back to that concept of dharma that you were talking about. This perspective was published in the European Heart Journal in 2020 in the depths of the COVID pandemic. And this is when you really introduce our reader to that age-old notion of dharma, which in the article you defined, similar to how you defined here, the inherent order of reality that is nurtured by right thought and action. And you contextualize the healthcare workers' conflict during the COVID pandemic, that conflict of that sense of duty and service to our patients, which sometimes was at odds with their sense of personal well-being as they were sacrificing their own safety and the safety of their families. In the paper, you reinforced our commitment to our patients despite this conflict. And then you introduced another conflict that is very much real in the healthcare system today, that of the financial interests and maybe the realities of the systems in which we practice versus the welfare of our patients, which sometimes are synergistic, but can often be at odds. And the need to realign our commitment to our patients from a systems perspective back with dharma and get ready for this next battle ahead. So again, this is just so beautifully written. And, I wonder how does this concept of dharma, influence your approach and your decision-making and how you live your life as a doctor, a scientist, a mentor in these various capacities?
Yes, so this is a great question, Amit. I don't think I've ever been asked a question about dharma in such fashion. So I applaud you for your creativity in putting this question together. And this is a question that I ask myself, almost every day. It could be a tough question to ask yourself because, like as I alluded to even before, a lot of our lives are just about self-discovery, right? Who we truly are. And like I said, life will throw circumstances at you and opportunities at you and also obstacles at you so that you can find the path that is truly inherent to your purpose. And you have to be smart enough to sort of pick up on the cues, because like nobody's gonna come in the form of Krishna, right, and recite you the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, I wish that was true, but if we are all Arjunas, which is how we perceive each one of us, then our Krishna is who we find within us, and the only paths to finding our Krishna, and for the non-Hindu, non-Buddhist, a non-spiritual audience or listenership, it's just the inner purposes. And when I'm referring to Krishna, it's the inner God, it's the inner superhero, it's the inner purpose. And that requires a lot of inner work, spiritual work. And, some of the answers that you may find may be the answers that you do not like. But you have to be honest enough and bold enough to sort of listen to the inner voice. I'll give you an example, if, for example, the conflict, and it shouldn't really be, look, patients come first, and, I really enjoy doing procedures, but, and this is an extremely personal example, right? It's also coming from the honest space of vulnerability, which I think is important to share because, we want this conversation to be authentic. And that is that, in the long term, is my dharma as a proceduralist, or is my dharma as an author and a writer, right? And it's a question that I grapple with on a daily basis. Now, that does not mean that I do not enjoy interventional cardiology. I really enjoy it. There's a reason why I pursued that training for an additional couple of years after general cardiology fellowship. But I truly enjoy writing too, and there's a lot of purpose in. I find a lot of purpose in writing, and I'm sure that I hope I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I hope that comes across in the writings that I've done. Whether it's in the form of a poetry book on loss and heartbreak, and I wanted to give that spiritual meaning also, or whether it's all these perspectives that I've written. So I think as each one of us, evolves and grows and self-discovers, these questions are bound to come up, and, life will throw obstacles as well as opportunities to sort of align your dharma with your karma. For example, Parallax as a medium for public speaking and dissemination of wisdom is within cardiovascular medicine. I feel is a true calling, and sharing inspirational journey of my seniors and peers and colleagues. Similarly, taking up research endeavors in the region for the Cleveland Clinic, and doing studies from administrative databases to answer questions, and even writing these perspective pieces. So I feel that this is truly a calling and is aligned with my dharma. So at the end of the day, you have 24 hours and you can't do everything. Is what I think is absolutely true, and each thing you've done well, takes time, and you need time to hone on your skills also. So I think these are the kinds of conversations I have with myself, and I don't know if this was being too vulnerable to share it here with you or with the audience, but again, I'm just being completely transparent, honest.
Absolutely, Dr. Kalra. And and talking about Parallax as a calling, how it's a podium for sharing wisdom and voice from yourself and your colleagues, your mentors, and your mentees. Much in the same way how I feel about CardioNerds. With Parallax, you are the artist, and Parallax is your canvas. It's a reflection of who you are, and it's what you put out into the world. And so my final question for you is, in creating this masterpiece, what do you hope it means to your audience, and what is your goal as its creator for its future?
Yeah, why? That's a great question. I hope it's a masterpiece. I don't know if it is one, but I just I just contradicted myself when I said that I hope it's a masterpiece. That should not be any of my business, right? Like, that's what the Gita teaches you. You're just doing that action so that it's for the passion that you do the action, and then the results you leave to the destiny of the product. But for Parallax, definitely aspirations and hope is for it to touch as many lives of the cardiovascular healthcare professional and provider as it can. I have derived a lot of meaning and inspiration from all these conversations myself. And when I'm asking or posing questions to my guests, I'm asking or posing questions as the representative of the listener. So I'm the listener myself when I'm asking these questions. I just have the great fortune and the opportunity to be the host and be the voice. But the intention is to be the representation of the average listener, which I'm incredibly grateful that Parallax is now downloaded in over 50 countries. And, I've gotten comments from as far as Zimbabwe and, obviously, India, US and the UK for sure, because of my history in India and because of my current residence in the US and because Radcliffe is in the UK, those are our top 3 countries. But, we're downloaded in many, many countries. And that's, I don't take that lightly. I take that with a lot of responsibility. So my goal is to be the voice of the average listener and garner as much knowledge and information as I can from that successful guest that I have on the show, so that people who are looking up to them or who want to emulate them can learn from them, not only from their successes, but also from their trials and tribulations and their failures. Because, there is no success story without failure, right? Like, success does not happen without failure. So more so than sharing successes, which, we, like, all of us are great at doing that. I really want to focus on failures and how, because, failures will teach you the most about yourself and about the world and about your true inner strengths. So failure, I really want to like dissect failures when I'm questioning guests, and I really want to dissect, times and points in their lives when they were confused and they were not quite sure which direction or which path to take. Because, those are the kinds of moments that each one of us has in each of our lives, professional and personal, but more so professional here, because we're talking about professional development with Parallax. So my hope is that I can continue to have an inquisitive mind and can continue to be the voice of the average listener and continue to get the content that the listenership finds meaningful and purposeful, and can implement those lessons in their lives to better their own. That is my true aspiration, quite frankly.
Well, Dr. Kalra, all I have to say is congratulations for everything you've accomplished and all the good that you put out into the world. Dan and I frequently talk about how bewildering and motivating it is to see how you straddle all these different aspects of your life and these duties, these different things you're doing. And what I've come to realize is there's extraordinary consistency in all these different activities you're involved with. There's consistency and they're synergistic with one another. It's not that you're splitting your attention, like they inform one another. So here in this conversation, we got to see how these perspectives you've written come from, like this depths of who you are, and that comes out in how you've designed Parallax, and and the same sort of authenticity and goodwill and karma I can attest, comes out in your in-person interactions, with myself and the rest of CardioNerds when we've had the pleasure of, having you on, sort of behind the scenes. You're driven by scientific inquiry. You're extraordinarily well published, and a lot of that clearly comes from your patient care, and the results go back to your patient care. So there's, I'm starting to see how the wheels are turning. How it's not that you're involved with so many things; it's that there's this consistency that drives everything together. It's sort of this a tide that lifts all boats in your life. At least that's my perspective from outside in. So I just want to again congratulate you for doing everything so well, and and putting out so much good karma. I've definitely been a benefactor, as so many others have as well.
Oh, thanks, Amit. This was great. Well, you're the first guest host of Parallax, so congratulations on that. Dan has missed out, for the record.
I know he's got major FOMO right now. He'll tell me that later. But I just want to say again, thank you so much, Dr. Kalra, for joining us here on Parallax today.
We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, produced by Radcliffe Cardiology in association with makeadent.org. We aim to bring you a new angle of all things cardiology every second week. Review us on your favourite podcast app, or send your comments or questions to podcast@radcliffe-group.com. To view the series, head to radcliffecardiology.com/podcasts/Parallax. Thanks for listening.